Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Linwood Cox Jr. With another exciting episode of the Book of Aliel. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm going to be doing a speed round a little bit just because I got a lot to cover today in today's episode. I just got home from church, so I'm super pumped. I always am. And I'm also excited because this is actually, and I'm surprised that this is the first episode I've actually done on a Sunday. So it's interesting as inspiration just came and, I just got done from church. I go to Elevation Church to be able to then express some of my insights. So last week, I was talking about just the unpracticalities of the new year that people said. I do believe that there is purpose in the new year. So I kind of wanted to be able to share practically what kind of makes sense in the new year. When I first started actually going to Elevation Church, they have an interesting concept there. In the first year, I was a little skeptical about it. Finding a word that expresses the year to come. My skepticism, if the word came for you, peace, the expectation that you don't never need peace anymore. But then I think through instruction throughout my life, right? 1 year happens, it's one word. 1 year happens, it's another word. It's a continual story. God equipping you with different things that you need in your life that never really go away. They're eternal. Which is the reason why, one of my favorite Bible verses is 2 Corinthians 4:18. Look not to the things that are seen, but look to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient. They don't last very long here, but the things that are eternal, they last forever. And then so these expressions, these words you get, they continually stay in your life because they're eternal concepts that are just brilliant. And it's brilliant to understand the masterwork of God, considering that, if you consider yourself to be that, then you are yourself the masterwork of God. And it's kind of the reason why I created the business that I had, because I wanted to look at people and what does God look like for, particularly in this conversation, men. So the first word that I had, when I first started at Elevation was freedom. Being able to, without what I need and what I expected to have, just to be a freedom and expression, just go out and build and create relationships and stuff like that. And then, the second year, last year, was the word Genesis. And, just how hard that was because, I had expectations of how, it's when I first started the business and how the beginning of something, right? And I started reading Genesis stuff and really getting into that chapter. And then all of a sudden, things went absolutely to crap. And the story didn't turn out the way that I thought at all. 2023 was the hardest year I've ever had in my existence. If I could have had a remote, if you've seen the movie Click, if I could have had a remote and literally fast forwarded chapters, I definitely would have, because the last year was just absolutely impossible. But out of that year in Genesis, God pulled out fear, the idea of losing, the idea of having things that I really thought that I wanted at the time, and then have them things taken away with me and be able to express even a more deeper sense of freedom that, when you're enthralled by different things that motivate you, they're not freeing, because, they let you down. And then so, just a bigger story. So this year, when it came time around, I wasn't too altruistic about it because at the time I was still struggling. But, I was thinking in my mind, self-imposed, like I would love the idea of a miracle because I felt like I needed it at that time. But it's interesting how the actual beginning of the year started. I started working at a new job at the YMCA, and when we started working there, they were asking then, what would be a word to sort of, encapsulate, what your goals are and what you're shooting for. And I remember thinking about the word, just like in my soul, the same way that freedom did. And, when it first started, the word flourish started peeping in my soul. And, when I first got the word about freedom, I said, okay, Lord, and this is open up a grain of salt because this, I might be speaking a different language for some people out there, but, I like to test God. So I'm like, okay, I want to experience this word, right? Not to just have, a word and, it kind of disappear. And then so that word would just pop up everywhere was the idea of flourishing. And even then, no sooner than a week later, after I had the conversation, I had this conversation with a gentleman in the hallway, and it was just out of middle of nowhere. This older guy that's in his 70s, he's, he built a business, and then I don't know, because he's older and just wanted to have a conversation for an individual to talk to. Ended up sitting down while I was at my job, and he was just expressing some of his insights, and I was telling him about the word flourish, and immediately after that he said, well, you do know how trees are grown, right? And the idea that when trees get grown, they have to be deeply rooted. And it's interesting, before they have to peak, they have to go down to survive. The lower portion is always a lot 2 times larger than the actual tree is. And so you got to know that the reason why God was doing that, especially in the freedom season, is because he needed to have me deeply rooted in relationships and people and different things that that I could explore and sort of grow into. But then obviously the next season, Genesis, it was more like a pruning. So everything hurt, because once things started coming forth in my life, God had to go in and snap these things and just break me in a lot of different areas. And it sucked, because I hated being pruned, and I hated being brought to a deeper realization of who I am. But my name means, I know that I'm saying a lot, but my name in the English described by definition actually means beautiful tree. So I've had a lot of words over years, spoken over to me with the idea that, I was to be rooted, right? And, trees survive and they become the largest actually when they're planted really close to rivers and things like that, well sources and stuff. Interestingly enough, then, I go to church today, and the pastor is talking. So just to go to scripture really quick, because I brought my Bible and I thought that I had been reading, and he was reading out of Isaiah 27. So if you go to Isaiah 27, it says, sing about the fruitful vineyard. And, there was another verse that I was looking for when it came to the word flourish. And in Isaiah 92, it says, the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of God. Just insane. And it makes me excited that God thinks about me in these ways to then implement and show me a bigger story, when I'm lost and I feel like that I don't know what to expect out of this year. A guy asked me that two months ago, and I was like, dude, honestly, I don't know. I'm just getting out of survival mode, to be honest. And I sort of had PSD from the past season. So it's just been super encouraging, for me, where man then meets, the invisible God and the actual practicality in life. Only to say that if you're out there, what do I believe? Do I believe that through a word? Yes, absolutely. Our words are powerful. God uses words as a sense of power to bring creation, even if you look at Genesis 1 in our lives. So surely, if there's anything practical about our lives that can have definition, well, then you will understand when abusive words have been used against us. And again, I talked about, the words that I've heard over my life, faggot and, small, not strong, not confident, a weakling, a vagabond, not made of anything. All these things that I attached to myself over my life. Then when you start replacing these words with the way that God sees you, and just the continuation of the story in my life. And so I hope it brings encouragement for you guys out there. For those who don't believe it, that's cool. I get the lack of knowledge and not knowing, but for those who are willing to seek, and I always bring this up as a scripture in every week. I started this mission and really this business because, I truly believe that, like in Isaiah 29, that when Isaiah 29 verse 24, that when he says, for those who are wayward in spirit, they will gain understanding, and for those who lament, they will accept instruction. I do believe that if there are people who are out there and are lost, then you'll hear these things, and it would only gravitate you to a larger destination of who you are as an individual and who you were made to be. So again, my name is